All right. First of all, I want to thank iOSKonf, of course, for having me. It's always fun to be at the first conference. It's always nice to see some familiar faces, a lot of new faces. And I can't wait to see the rest of the talk as well. So, as I said, my name is Hidde. It's a bit of an odd name. It's very Dutch, Frisian actually. But I'm an Amsterdam-based designer turned indie app developer. What does that mean? It means like I used to draw a lot of rectangles, and now I code the rectangles as well. I started designing these so-called rectangles 15 years ago, and now I'm a full-time enjoying life, just making cool apps, I guess. I actually share an office with Jordi in Amsterdam, so it's already nice that our whole office is here. We got a nice, nice team outing, as we say, because we both work for ourselves. Anyway, currently have 6 apps in the App Store. They're all completely different. I always find it very hard, like, oh, what app do you work on? Like, I have a toothbrush timer, I have a kitesurf tracker, I have a music app, goal tracker, but also a ChatGPT client called PT. They are all on watchOS as well. This is what they look like in short. Oh gosh, spoiler. This is what they look like. So as you can see from a little glimpse, they are completely different. I always try to make every app very different, but very hidden in a way as well. But I am working on a new one, a 7th one, together with a good friend of mine called Paul Piella, and it's called Helm. Some of you might have heard of it already. So one day, actually most days, when I ever visit App Store Connect, I hate it and I want to stop everything I do. So me and Paul decided, well, let's try and fix that, and we'll make a native Mac app for App Store Connect. The good thing is we're nearly there, and it's launching. Gosh, that's next week already, isn't it? Next week, we're launching next week. If you no, thanks. So if you want to try it out, it's still available in free beta. It's fun, I hope. But we're here to talk about this: how to improve your app with quick wins. Before we get started, let's look at this title for a second, because improve can mean a lot of things. Quick, what does that mean? So in short, with improve in this case, I mean it's easier to use for your user. It's less of a hassle for a user. App obviously is any of the Apple platforms, because we're at an iOS conference. And quick means you should be able to implement it within a day. Should, because it's still software development. You never know what happens. So why is this important? Well, if you're in a big organization, you sometimes see a chart like this, because in big organizations, they do love charts. And everyone knows that there's tasks that are short in effort, but have a massive impact. And yet, a lot of big companies don't really act on these small tasks. And there's one reason why they do that as well, because they want to measure impact. They want to measure impact. It's like, okay, we're going to build this, what's the KPI? Luckily, as an indie dev, you don't really have KPIs, but in short, impact, in my opinion, should not really be measured by numbers. It's something you would feel, and it's something you would get back from feedback, but it also will help you market your app in a way. To give you an example of what is a small, big impact thing. So if you watch Netflix years ago, there used to not be this button, and by adding this button, which is a small effort, it's just a tiny button. Netflix already knows how long an intro of a show is, but just a small button gave a massive impact. Like, people went absolutely nuts on this. Like everyone started tweeting about, oh my god, this skip intro button saves my life. And this basically means that with a small effort like a button, you get free marketing, because everyone promotes your service in this way. And the reason why people go crazy for a small impact like this is because we have one thing very much in common. I guess we have more, but one thing that I'm referring to is we're all a bit lazy. And that sounds a bit harsh maybe, but I always jokingly said when I was starting my career, like, oh, what makes you a good designer? I am the laziest person in the room. I just want to do as little as possible for as much as possible. And lazy doesn't necessarily have to be a bad word. It's something no one likes to do more work than necessary. So now we know why we do it. Let's get started, and let's dive into some of the topics I'll handle today. There's 4 key pillars that I want to tackle, and all 4 of them will have like small things that you could look at your app for today and maybe apply. Maybe you do some of those already. That's great. There's just 4 pillars to look at. So first thing is enhancing first impressions. First impressions are important. It's like if you meet someone new, you also try to make a good first impression. It's like love at first sight sometimes, hopefully. So this is not different for any app design, because you only have one first impression. And how do you enhance your first impression? By making people do less work. So we all have made like a text field, right? This is a Swift UI text field. All the codes today will be Swift UI. If there's anyone UI kits, I'm sorry, you can figure it out. You did that on yourself today. So this is a basic text field, and this works. It's fine. It works out of the box. Does a lot of things on the for you, but by spending just a little bit more time and just 4 extra lines, well, if you 4 extra properties, I guess, on a text field, you get so much more of a better user experience. And I will go through some of these right now. So let's start with the first. The text content type. A content type is one that's so often forgotten, and it's the one that I always notice the first when I use someone else's app, and it's the one that I hate the most when it's forgotten. Because what does this do? It gives you this autofill bar on top of a keyboard. And it looks, like I said, it's just a single line of code, but this makes me fill in my name with a single tab instead of typing all my letters. I'm Dutch, I have a very long name. This saves me a lot of time. And that's not all. There's name and email are very common cases, but there's actually also one for flight number and shipping tracking number, birthday, URLs. There's I think there's about 20 of them right now, if not more. So whenever you create a new text field, think of if there's any content type that fits with the text field. So up next is focus state. It was when SwiftUI just launched, it was very difficult to do anything with focus. There was no control, so people tend to still use the UI view representable. Luckily, a few years ago, we got something called focus state, which is very easy to add. You can create a custom enum. You can even use a bool, but in this case, we'll use a custom enum, and then that will tell you if the text field is focused or not. This allows you to customize the experience based on what's active, but it also allows you to customize how the submit of the text field responds. So in this example, if imagine there's also a text field with email, because the slide is not that long, we couldn't fit it in there. So imagine that's similar, but with email. So in this case, if you press on the submit on the done button, if email is empty, the focus should shift to email, right? Because otherwise, the focus might get removed from the text field, and the user have to tap again on the other text field, which is annoying. We don't like extra taps. But also, if the email is filled in, it's probably ready to go, and then you can press go to submit straight away. And speaking of the submit button, it's very easy to forget to add the right submit label. I think by default it says done, and sometimes it's super confusing when you press done and it creates a new line. So this is also just a single line that helps you create a good experience. So we added just a few lines, and these few lines of code can easily save 30 seconds of work already in one screen. And 30 seconds of work for first impression is a lot of time. Like I said, with first impression, you only have one first impression, so everything that feels faster is a win. And now we speak of text fields anyway, there's another one. This one is super popular to use, sometimes forgotten, but when they're searched, this is the way to go. And that's great. You get a free search bar, and it works. It changes the result, blah, blah, blah. But what about the suggestions? There's an API. It is not even new anymore. Really, we're almost WWDC again. This is 2 years old, I think. There's an easy way to get search suggestions, and this will present a list of suggestions underneath the search bar as soon as you type. You can make it as fancy as you want. In this case, I just show search suggestions would be an array of strings, and I just show a text with the suggestion. How you get the suggestion, that really depends on the case, of course. But just give it a property of search completion. If the user taps on it, then the search will do that suggestion. Here's an example of how I do it with now playing. When you start typing, you can the top one just is basically what you're actually typing, because people like to sometimes have a very specific search. But the rest are suggestions based on Apple Music in this case. A fun, quick way to get more suggestions is by using this API. And this API is always, I think, sounds a bit intimidating, doesn't it? Like natural language, like it sounds a bit AI, and it does not look very helpful, but it is actually, once you use it a couple times, it's quite easy to use. And if not, then probably ChatGPT knows how to use it better, and you get free good search suggestions. You can also use the API for other improvements, of course, as well. So now we have first impressions done. Another quick win, which is really good, not just for your users, but also for the growth of your app or the retention rate of your app, is extending your app's presence outside of your app. The most popular text field in the system is probably this one, the spotlight. And it used to be very difficult to get something in the spotlight. But since a few years, Apple has been hammering down on this thing called app intents. I would not be surprised if we get even more app intents this year, AI related even. Because last year we got interactions for widgets, so they love app intents in Apple, and rightfully so. They're good. It's a good API. But this is not a talk about app intents, so I'm not going to dive deep in app intents. But creating app intents will enable functionality of your app to shortcuts, but it also will push your app to the spotlight, and you can even make it nice and visual. What I've done here. And sometimes you get benefit with that even in this case, when I search for Rolling Stone, I get 2 of my apps popping up in the results. Even though Rolling Stone would not necessarily be connected to my apps, it shows up because I listened to Like Rolling Stone by Bob Dylan, and I have a goal in mind that I want to listen to all the Rolling Stone top 500 albums this year. But this is basically free marketing within the OS. And it was just a couple of minutes of work, or like maybe half a day, to create a few different app intents. But if you're a bit more old-fashioned, or you just want to have a backup, then user activity is a great alternative, because user activity also will push it to the spotlight. And so it's always good to let the system know more about your app than less, of course. So I always do both. And then when the user then opens up with that user activity, you can easily just handle it with a single line. So that's the spotlight. And what else can we do to have our app connect with more places outside of the app? Well, a popular thing that's often forgotten is drag and drop support. Drag and drop support is so easy since a few years. It used to be like hell to me, but since recently, they made it so easy that, for example, in Helm, you can drag and drop keywords. Like, this is all it takes to make it draggable, and this is all it takes to make it droppable. And of course, there's different things between drag and drop within the app and drag and drop outside of the app. And why is it important? Well, if you can drag a URL inside your app, for example, and handle that like that, it's another way for your app to communicate with other services. But in this, like I said, for the key words, it's very important for ASO to see which order your keywords are. So instead of like fingering around with commas and make sure the text field is still right, we're like, okay, we'll make it just draggable so you can at least just change the order without having a headache. The next pillar is like present things a bit more visually. This is obviously one of those cases like, oh yeah, he's a designer. It's very easy to make pretty pictures for him. And that's true. I'm sorry. It takes a lot of time to get there. But there are some small things that you can do to help. So sometimes it's just better to show and don't tell, because if you think about a lot of apps, it's just lists of informations. So we see a lot of text at the same time. So every now and then it works really well to bring in some form of visual element to break down the content. And as an example, I could here, for example, I could list what kind of award it won, what kind of video there is, and all the stuff as a list. But instead, I choose to pick icons for some of the things, just to make it a bit more playful and a bit more easier to read, and it just looks nicer as well, really. So I went all the way, and of course, this is the designer me. Of course, you can just use any icon pack or SF symbols. Don't go crazy like me and make every icon unique. But the point is, I went and made icons for things like genres, but also for content types and awards and verified content, etc., etc. And I even went crazy to make icons for almost all the instruments that I could think of. But the point here is mainly just find a way to present something a bit more visual instead of only text, 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 text. And to help you with that, with something that's very common in most apps, I would say, is link presentation. There's always a link to a website in most apps at some place, right? And there's this way to do it, like the classic, not classic, the link that shows up like a button almost, and you can style it like a button. Works great. It opens Safari. It's nice. If you're really fancy and up to date, you can do it like this, a very cool Markdown thingy. But it still shows up as like just blue or tint-colored text, really. But then I was like, we were talking about making things more visual. So why not just do this, right? And the funny thing about presenting your links like this, it's one line of code, really. It's like one view. And LP link view is actually the one line of UIKit in this presentation, because it's still only available in UIKit, unfortunately still now. But it only needs a URL. So it's very easy to convert it to Swift UI view. But what this does is this presents your URL similar like iMessage does, right? So it gives the OG image, it gives the title, it gives the source. But the great benefit of this is if it's a YouTube video or a Vimeo video, you get a free video player with it. You just press on the middle, it opens up like a system player. That's free functionality, and it makes the experience a whole lot nicer. Yeah. So, but the funny thing is, this view already exists since iOS 13. That's almost 5 years from now. So it still baffles me that this is not used as much as it is today. And of course, it is part of the link presentation API, and you can also just use it to get either only the icon, only the OG image, or only the title. Just so to get more information from a URL is quite powerful, and it can help you let the user identify what website it actually is. So here's an example. We showed a little title just you can see that it is actually the privacy policy you're referring to, and not by accident the marketing page. Then hover states is something that's gotten a lot more attention since VisionOS, because if you ever use VisionOS and you've seen a button that doesn't hover, it feels broken. You don't think you can tap it. And of course, we have a lot of platforms like iOS, all the usual suspects. And if you think about it, almost all of them have some form of hover state. Only iOS is, even if you only do iOS app, I would still advise giving buttons hover states, because at some point you might want to expand to iPadOS, you might want to expand to VisionOS, macOS. If you're really brave and really have a lot of time, you might want to expand to tvOS. Argumentally, only platform that really doesn't need hover states at this point is watchOS. And even that, I think, might change it, because they do a lot more with the tapping, the single-handed control, so they might do things there as well. And adding a hover state, luckily, is as simple as adding a content shape with the dot hover effect to it. You can go completely crazy in styling if you're on anything but VisionOS, I think. I think for VisionOS they do it for privacy reasons, that they're only allowed to do these basic shapes. But even adding this few lines of code again, it makes the experience a whole lot nicer. It looks and feels a whole lot nicer. And the last thing to make things more visual, oh, this is my favorite transition. Animations. I mean, come on. You can't do an animation slide without that. So animations these days are also like crazy easy, really. And of course, please don't animate everything in your app. Don't make it, unless it's a game, I guess. But don't make all the thing bounce like those letters did. But even adding a simple line as like a bouncy or snappy smooth animation to a specific value that changes can make a big difference in how things feel. Because an animation, what does an animation do? It transitions from state A to state B in a more natural way. Like nothing in real life is instant, right? Everything, when I move my hand like this, it's not that out of the blue, it's like that. There's always some form of animation. So it makes things feel a lot more organic. And to give a little example with this widget, this is the default widget animation, which is not terrible, to be fair. But adding 3 more lines of code, and it feels so much more organic. It feels like the widget is more alive. And if you're a bit scared of animations still, there's luckily other people that are fantastic with animations, and some of them even make like open source libraries. These are free to use. The POW is a really good one. It used to be paid and then it got acquired, I think, so now it's free, so everyone benefits. So now we made things more visual. This is, I think, the thing most people struggle with the most. I still struggle with this the most, and that's keeping things simple. One thing that really helps with keeping things simple is to keep focus. And what does that mean, keeping focus? Because we talked about focus states, that's different focus. In this case, I mean, having a clear goal in mind of what this view or what this app should do. Really think about it. Just instead of just jumping right in and pushing all the buttons in the same view, breathe for a little bit and think about what is the actual goal of this view. So as an example, this view is really focused on App Store optimization, right? So what I personally often do, not always, sometimes I use the document instead. In the top of my code, I often write this extra line of text. It's not really code, is it? Which helps me remember what is the goal of this view. Why does this view exist? What is the purpose of this view? And when I notice I've added something that really doesn't benefit this end goal, then I try to remove it or maybe add a navigation to it, so it should be a different view on its own. And by a simple line of text, you can help keep remembering yourself, like what am I building here? And to jump back on like make things visual, like this is a great example of like I could have just showed you the name and title of your app like App Store Connect does. But by giving it a little bit context of how the user will actually see it, you can play around with your title and your ASO and actually see how it will look like in the App Store. It still baffles me that Apple has never done this in App Store Connect. So that's another example of making things more visual. And with the keeping things simple is a question to ask yourself a lot that helps as well, other than the goal, is like, what can I do to make reaching the goal easier? Like I said again, be that lazy user, be your lazy self, and think, what can I let the computer do that I don't want to do myself? Because these computers these days, they can do a whole lot, I can tell you that. So another simple example, just give me a warning when there's when there's a double keyword or there's a keyword in my keywords list, it's also my name. I guess This is Apple. Apple doesn't do this because they don't want to show anything about the algorithms they have. But please, just it's so easy for a computer to match and see that there's two the same in a row. But it's harder for you as a person to spot. You have to look all the words in this case. And a small addition like this did give something like this, as we mentioned before. Like people will say love it, and people will tweet about it or share it with their mom. I don't know. They will share it anyway. So whatever you do, try to remove extra tabs. That's basically the gist of this talk. Like there's so much we can let our computers do. That we should let our computers do, and your users will be thanking you later. And then if you, at the end, if you still have some time, or you're going to bed late at night and you still want to read something nice, or you're still on your computer, just whack this little shortcut, and it will open up this nice little page that has a lot of nice chapters. And I know I know there's design in the top left corner. That's a bit scary, but in the end, this page is so full of great resources, and they update it a lot, and it really helps you build better apps, really. So that was my presentation about improving your app. I will be around here, of course, the whole conference. Please do talk to me about, and I would love to hear what you're working on, but also what design struggles you have. I love to help you improve your app. It still is a big passion of mine. And if anything, have fun with whatever you're doing. That's the most important thing in the world, I would say. Okay, thank you very much.